We're going to go through example 7 from notes P.1 to review operations with fractions. The first problem, 7a, we are asked to add two fractions. And the fractions are 2/7 plus 3/5. In order to add fractions, we need to find and use the least common denominator. In this case, the least common denominator is 35. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply each of the fractions by a funny form of 1. We can always multiply a number by 1 and get the same value. So here we're going to multiply this first fraction by 5/5. And the second fraction, 3/5, we're going to multiply by 7/7, multiplying both by a funny form of 1. Once we do that multiplication, we're going to have 10/35 plus 21/35. Once we have the same denominator, we can add the numerator. So 10 plus 21 is 31, and we get 31/35. Looking at 7b, we have a similar problem, except now we have rational expressions. So we're trying to add 4 over x minus 3 plus 5 over the quantity 2x plus 1. Once again, we need a least common denominator. In this case, it'll be x minus 3 times the quantity 2x plus 1. So once again, we're going to multiply each fraction by a funny form of 1. So we're going to have 4x minus 3. The funny form of 1 that we're going to use here is 2x plus 1 over 2x plus 1. That's the factor that's missing from its denominator. And the second fraction, 5 over the quantity 2x plus 1, we're going to multiply that by x minus 3 over x minus 3. Okay, once we do that, we'll have a common denominator, and we can add those fractions. So we're going to continue working with the numerators of each of the fractions. So I'm going to distribute the 4. So I'm going to distribute the 4 here to both 2x and 1. So I'm going to get 8x plus 4 over this denominator, 2x plus 1 times x minus 3, plus the second fraction, distributing the 5 to the quantities x and minus 3, we'll get 5x minus 15 all over this common denominator. Okay, now that we have the same denominator, we can add the numerators. So 8x and 5x gives us 13x. Plus 4 minus 15 is going to be minus 11. And then if we expand 2x plus 1, that quantity times x minus 3, I'm going to FOIL that out. You can say, so I'm going to get 2x times x is 2x squared. Minus 3 times 2x is minus 6x. Plus 1 times x, which is x, minus 3. And I'm going to combine like terms in the denominator. So I'm going to have 13x minus 11 in the numerator. And then 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 in the denominator. Moving on to problem letter C. Here we're multiplying fractions. When we're multiplying fractions, we don't have to worry about a common denominator. We simply multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So I'll have 7 times 3, which is 21. And then in the denominator, I'll distribute the x, each one of the terms 2x and 1. So I will get 2x squared plus x. So it's 21 divided by 2x squared plus x. The next problem, letter D, is we're dividing fractions. So we have 7 divided by x divided by 3/2. So when we want to divide fractions, so I'll put a note here to divide fractions. Divide fractions, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so in this case, 7 over x divided by 3/2 is the same thing as 7 over x times 2 over 3. Now, letter D is the same thing as we had in letter C. So multiply numerators. So 7 times 2 is 14. Multiply the denominators. X times 3 is 3x. The last problem, we're going to actually solve in 2 ways. And it's your choice which method that you choose. So method 1, I'm going to work with the numerator and then work with the denominator. So work with numerator and denominator separately. Okay, what do I mean by that? I'm going to simplify the numerator. So I've got 3/5 minus 2/3. I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to write the denominator as 5/2 plus 3. I want to write that as a fraction, so I'm going to write it as 3/1. In the numerator, we need to get a common denominator. That common denominator will be 15. So I'm going to multiply the first fraction by funny form of 1, which is 3/3. The second fraction, I'm going to multiply by funny form of 1, which is 5/5. So the LCD for the numerator here is 15. The denominator, I'm going to do the same thing. The least common denominator here is 2. So the first fraction, 5/2, I can leave alone. 3/1, I need to multiply by a funny form of 1, which is 2/2. So in the numerator, I'm going to do 3/3 times 3/5, which, let's see, is going to end up with 9/15, minus 2 times 5 is 10/15. That's the numerator. And then the denominator, I have 5/2 plus 6/2. We'll continue to simplify here. So 9/15 minus 10/15, we have a common denominator. That's going to give us -1/15. So we got -1/15 in the numerator, and the denominator 5/2 plus 6/2 is 11/2. We're dividing fractions, easy as pie. Flip the second and multiply. So I'm going to find the reciprocal of the denominator. So I have -1/15 times 2/11, and that's going to be -2/165. Okay, method 2. And you can use with whichever method you like. Sometimes one method is more efficient than the other. So method 2, what we're gonna do is multiply by the least common denominator of all the fractions, by LCD of all denominators, over LCD of all denominators. That's going to be our funny form of 1. In this case, the least common denominator of all the denominators, so we've got the denominators we have are 5, 3, 2, and 1. The LCD of these denominators is 5 times 3 times 2 in this case, which is 30. So we're going to multiply this entire complex fraction by a funny form of 1, which is going to be 30/1 over 30/1. So let's try it. I'm going to copy my original expression. So I have 3/5 minus 2/3 over 5/2 plus 3/1. And we're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the least common denominator of all the denominators, which is going to be 30/1 over 30/1. Which is a funny form of 1. The goal here, maybe I'll write that down up here. The goal here is it clears fractions. Okay, so it clears the fractions in one nice step. So what's going to happen? Let's focus on the numerator. We are going to multiply 30 times 3/5, right? So if I multiply 30 times 3/5, 30 divided by 5 is 6. So really what I'm left with is 3 times 6. And then I'm going to multiply 30 by 2/3. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. So we're left with 2 times 10, which is 20. And then in the denominator, we have 5/2 times 30. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So really this becomes 5 times 15 plus 3 times 30. 3 times 30, which is 90. So the numerator is 18 minus 20 over 5 times 15 is 75 plus 90, which is going to leave us with -2/165, which is the same answer as we got with method 1. All right, the benefit of using method 2 is that it clears all the fractions in one step.